What if the best war movies of the 1990s were not the ones Hollywood keeps forcing into every greatest ever list? While a few giant titles took all the glory, smaller films told stranger, sadder, and sometimes more honest stories. Some were buried on television. Others vanished after weak releases. Today, we are uncovering 17 overlooked war movies so strong that their disappearance almost feels like a crime against cinema. Before we begin, hit like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. Number 17. The Hunley, 1999. The Hunley takes a chapter of the American Civil War that sounds almost too strange to be real and turns it into a tight, claustrophobic drama. The story follows Lieutenant George Dixon and a small crew ordered to operate the H.L. Hunley, a hand-powered submarine designed to break the Union blockade around Charleston. There is no modern engine, no comfortable control room, and almost no space to move. 8 men sit shoulder to shoulder, turning a crank while the air slowly grows worse. The movie spends time showing how dangerous the machine is before it ever reaches an enemy ship. Earlier crews have already died inside it, and every test feels like a rehearsal for disaster. Donald Sutherland brings authority to General Beauregard, while Armand Assante gives Dixon a mixture of confidence and quiet fear. The film wisely avoids treating the submarine like a magical weapon. It is more like a metal coffin that happens to move underwater. Its standout sequence comes during the final approach toward the USS Housatonic. The crew turns the crank in darkness as water presses against the hull, and every sound could reveal them. The attack itself is historic, but the movie's real power comes afterward, when victory does not mean safety. The men have changed naval warfare, yet they may never return to hear anyone celebrate it. The Hunley was made for television, which is probably why many viewers missed it. But its cramped sets, patient tension, and unusual subject make it far more memorable than many larger Civil War productions. Number 16. The Trench, 1999. The Trench does not explain the entire First World War. It does something more personal and painful. The film stays with a group of young British soldiers during the final 48 hours before the opening of the Battle of the Somme. They wait in a muddy frontline position, clean equipment, trade jokes, argue about home, and pretend they are not thinking about what will happen when the whistle blows. Paul Nichols plays Billy McFarlane, a teenage soldier serving beside his older brother Eddie. Daniel Craig appears as Sergeant Telford Winter, a hard man trying to keep discipline while knowing that discipline may not save anyone. The movie's strength is its waiting. Nothing feels heroic as men listen to shells and watch the clock. Their small conversations make them feel less like famous soldiers from a history book and more like ordinary boys placed in an impossible situation. The most memorable scene arrives near the end. Orders pass down the trench. Ladders are set in place, and the men prepare to climb into the open. The camera stays close to their faces. Some pray, some shake, and others joke, because silence would be worse. Then the signal comes, and all the nervous talk disappears. The Trench was criticized by some viewers for being limited in scale, but that limitation is exactly its point. It is not about generals moving pieces across a map. It is about the people waiting below that map. Watching it today, you may be surprised by how effectively a small production captures the fear of a massive battle. If forgotten war films deserve a second life, give this video a like and send it to someone who thinks they have seen everything. Subscribe now, because the films higher on this list become even harder to believe were overlooked. Number 15. The Last Lieutenant, 1993. The Last Lieutenant is a forgotten Norwegian war movie about an old soldier who refuses to surrender simply because everyone around him has lost hope. The story begins in April 1940, as retired sea captain Thor Espedal returns home expecting a peaceful life. Almost immediately, German forces invade Norway, and he puts on his outdated uniform to report for military service. At headquarters, younger officers laugh at his age and old-fashioned rank. Espedal is first sent with a small group to destroy a bridge and slow the German advance. The younger men ignore his instructions, causing the demolition attempt to fail. Espedal then steps forward and finishes the dangerous job himself, proving that experience matters more than appearance. It is one of the movie's most satisfying scenes because the man everyone dismissed becomes the only person capable of completing the mission. When he returns, Espadal discovers that senior officers have decided to surrender. Furious at their defeatism, he takes weapons, vehicles, and a handful of volunteers into the Norwegian countryside. There, he forms his own small fighting force and continues resisting the advancing German troops. The most memorable sequence comes near the end, when Espadal's unit begins falling apart and he prepares to face an approaching attack almost alone. The moment is not presented as easy heroism. It shows an aging man clinging to duty when surrender would be safer. Directed by Hans Petter Moland and loosely inspired by Norwegian reserve officer Thor Ohanevig, The Last Lieutenant is a genuine feature film that deserves far more attention. Its unusual older hero and little-known Norwegian setting make it perfect for any list of overlooked 1990s war movies. Number 14. Paradise Road, 1997. Paradise Road tells a Second World War story that cinema has often pushed to the side, the experience of civilian women imprisoned after the fall of Singapore. Directed by Bruce Beresford, the film follows English, Australian, Dutch, and American women whose evacuation ship is attacked. Survivors reach Sumatra, only to be captured and placed in a Japanese internment camp. Glenn Close, Frances McDormand, Pauline Collins, and a young Kate Blanchett lead a remarkable cast. Yet the movie does not depend on star power. It focuses on hunger, illness, fear, class differences, and the daily effort to remain human when prisoners are treated as numbers. The film's defining sequence is the creation of a vocal orchestra. Because the women have no instruments, they use their voices to reproduce the different sections of an orchestra. Their first full performance begins quietly, as guards watch. For a few minutes, the camp changes. The fences remain, the danger remains, and no one has escaped. But the prisoners reclaim control over something the guards cannot easily take: harmony. The surrounding hardship keeps that scene from becoming overly sweet. Music is not presented as a magical solution. It is a brief shelter for people who know the next day will still be difficult. Paradise Road received a mixed response when it arrived and never became a major war classic. That is unfortunate. Its strongest moments are restrained, its subject is important, and its focus on women's endurance gives the decade one of its most unusual prison camp dramas. Number 13. The Tuskegee Airmen, 1995. Long before Red Tails brought their story to modern theaters, HBO made The Tuskegee Airmen, a serious and moving drama about the first black combat pilots in the United States Army Air Corps. Lawrence Fishburne leads the film as Hannibal Iowa Lee, one of several young men who arrive in Alabama believing that skill and discipline will be enough to earn their wings. They quickly learn that flight training is only one part of the test. Racist officers and officials expect them to fail, while the military studies every mistake as possible, proof that black pilots should never enter combat. The cadets must master dangerous aircraft while carrying the hopes of people denied the same chance. A standout sequence comes when the pilots finally fly escort missions over Europe. The movie shifts from classrooms and hearings to open sky, where their training becomes real. Enemy aircraft close in, bombers depend on them, and every decision must be made in seconds. The action is exciting, but these men are forced to prove what should never have been doubted. Another powerful moment comes during the effort to shut the program down. Supporters present the unit's actual record, challenging officials who are more loyal to prejudice than evidence. That battle uses documents instead of aircraft, yet it may decide whether the pilots serve. Because it was a television movie, the Tuskegee Airmen is often treated like a footnote. It should not be. The performances are strong, the story moves with purpose, and the film connects military service with a larger fight for equal dignity. Number 12. A Bright Shining Lie, 1998. A Bright Shining Lie is not a simple story about one brave officer fighting a bad system. It is a more troubling film about a man who can see the truth clearly and still become trapped by his own ambition. Bill Paxton plays John Paul Vann, an American military advisor sent to South Vietnam in the early 1960s. Van quickly discovers a dangerous gap between official reports and reality. Commanders claim victories, and American leaders prefer good news over truth. Van speaks openly to journalists and warns that the war is being misunderstood. Yet he is also restless, proud, and personally reckless. The film refuses to make him a clean hero. One sharp sequence follows the Battle of Op Bach, as Van pushes commanders to act amid confusion. Helicopters are hit, troops fail to move as planned, and officials later attempt to describe the result in softer language. The gap between what happened and what leaders admit becomes the film's central accusation. Another memorable moment arrives when Van returns to Vietnam as a civilian. He criticized the system, lost his military path, and still cannot stay away. The war has become the place where he feels most alive, even as it exposes his worst qualities. Made for HBO and based on Neil Sheehan's nonfiction book, A Bright Shining Lie, had too much complexity for viewers expecting a standard battlefield adventure. That complexity is exactly why it deserves another look. It shows how a war can be sustained not only by mistakes, but by people who learn to live inside those mistakes. Number 11. When Trumpets Fade, 1998. When Trumpets Fade begins with a soldier trying to survive, not trying to become a hero. Private David Manning, played by Ron Eldard, is fighting in the Hurtgen Forest during the Second World War. His unit has been reduced by repeated attacks. The trees hide danger in every direction, and the officers keep demanding ground that seems to offer little value. Manning only wants to leave alive, but commanders mistake his survival instinct for leadership. He is promoted and placed in charge of inexperienced replacements. Suddenly, the man who trusts no heroic speeches must lead soldiers who are looking to him for certainty. The opening sequence establishes the film's mood. Manning struggles through the forest while helping a badly wounded comrade. The exhausting journey brings no peace, only another assignment. The standout battle later involves an attack on a heavily defended position. Smoke, trees, poor visibility, and confused orders make the scene feel like controlled panic. Manning must decide whether to protect himself or risk everything for men he barely knows. He never becomes fearless. He acts while remaining frightened. Released by HBO in the same year as Saving Private Ryan and The Thin Red Line, When Trumpets Fade had almost no chance of dominating the conversation. Yet its smaller scale helps it. It presents courage as an unwanted responsibility, not a shining personality trait. For viewers tired of perfect movie soldiers, Manning is one of the decade's most believable reluctant leaders. Number 10. Savior, 1998. Savior is one of the bleakest war films of the decade, but its darkness has a purpose. Dennis Quaid plays Joshua Rose, an American whose family is lost in a bombing in Paris. Consumed by rage, he disappears into the French Foreign Legion and later becomes a mercenary with Bosnian Serb forces. At first, Joshua sees only groups and sides, not individuals. That begins to change when he meets Vera, a pregnant Serbian prisoner rejected by her own community because the child was conceived during captivity. After another soldier turns against her, Joshua protects Vera and helps deliver the baby. From that point, the movie becomes a difficult journey toward a United Nations safe area. The tunnel birth is the film's turning point. It is tense, messy, and emotionally uncomfortable. Joshua, who has spent years destroying connections between people, is suddenly responsible for bringing a new life safely into the world. Vera refuses to accept the child at first, and the film does not pretend that pain disappears because one man has changed his mind. Another unforgettable sequence places Joshua and the baby inside a partly sunken boat while civilians are brought to the water nearby. He must remain silent, even when every instinct tells him to act. The moment shows that choosing life can also bring unbearable guilt. Savior received little attention and can be difficult to watch, but it is not empty misery. It is about a man slowly recovering the ability to see another human being. That makes it harsh, flawed, and unexpectedly moving. Number 9. Captain Conan, 1996. Captain Conan asks a question that most war movies avoid. What happens to men who become excellent at fighting when the war is officially over? Bertrand Tavernier's French drama follows Conan, leader of a rough assault unit fighting on the Balkan front near the end of the First World War. His men specialize in close attacks, night raids, and unwanted missions. Conan is brave, loyal, difficult, and dangerous. He cares deeply for his soldiers, but has little respect for military rules. His closest friend, Lieutenant Norbert, is disciplined. Fighting hides their differences, but the armistice exposes them. The movie's early night assault is its most immediate action scene. Conan's men move through darkness, with speed and frightening confidence. There is no grand music telling us how to feel. The sequence shows why commanders need them and why peace may have no place for them. The more revealing scenes come later, when members of Conan's unit are accused of crimes committed after the war's supposed end. Norbert is assigned to investigate. He must judge men who were praised for violent behavior only days earlier. Conan sees betrayal, while Norbert sees a society trying to restore rules that the army itself had suspended. Philippe Torreton gives Conan enormous energy, but the film never turns him into a simple legend. He is a product of war, and also one of its victims. Captain Conan won recognition in France, yet remains little known to English-speaking viewers. That is a shame, because few films examine the awkward space between battlefield usefulness and peacetime responsibility with this much honesty. Number 8. Before the Rain, 1994. Before the Rain is not a conventional war film with one hero and one straight timeline. It uses three connected parts, moving between Macedonia and London, as old hatred turns neighbors into enemies. The film follows a young monk, a photo editor, and a war photographer named Alexander, whose lives cross in ways that only become clear near the end. In the first section, the monk Kirill hides Zamira, a young Albanian woman accused of killing a Macedonian man. Bound by silence, Kirill connects with her through looks and small gestures. Outside the monastery, armed men search for her. The quiet setting makes the danger feel even closer. The second part moves to London, where violence that seems far away suddenly enters an ordinary restaurant. The third follows Alexander returning to his village, hoping to escape war photography. Instead, he finds the same divisions he has documented elsewhere growing at home. The film's most famous idea is that time may not move in a perfect circle, even when events appear to repeat. Images return with altered meaning as rain promises relief and warns that something will break. One of the most powerful scenes comes when Alexander tries to protect someone from his own community. His camera can record suffering, but it cannot settle the hatred around him. He must choose whether witnessing is enough. Before the Rain earned international praise, yet rarely appears beside the decade's popular war titles. Its structure demands concentration, but the reward is a haunting story about how violence travels through families, villages, and memories. Number 7. Land and Freedom, 1995. Ken Loach's Land and Freedom begins with an old man's belongings being opened after his death. Letters, photographs, and a red cloth reveal the life he rarely discussed. The film returns to 1936, when unemployed Liverpool communist David Carr goes to Spain to oppose Francisco Franco's uprising. David joins a small international militia rather than a polished army. Its international members believe ordinary people can change history. Their early confidence is tested by poor weapons, confusion, and political arguments inside the Republican side. The film's best-known scene takes place in a village after landowners have fled. Fighters and villagers debate whether the land should be shared immediately or whether that decision should wait until the war is won. The passionate, messy discussion feels real. Loach lets political ideas sound like the words of ordinary people rather than lines from a textbook. The battlefield scenes use the same direct style. When an attack begins, nobody seems fully prepared. Orders are shouted, dust fills the air, and the cost of one mistake becomes personal. David later becomes caught between rival groups, claiming the same cause. Land and Freedom is not only about a war against an enemy. It is about a movement damaged by internal control, fear, and betrayal. Ian Hart makes David idealistic without making him foolish. The final handful of Spanish earth links his private life to a struggle that outlived him. This film is overlooked mainly because its history is complicated. But that complication is exactly what makes it essential. Number 6. Prisoner of the Mountains, 1996. Prisoner of the Mountains takes a story inspired by Leo Tolstoy and places it inside a modern conflict in the Caucasus. Russian soldiers Sasha and young Vanya are captured after their vehicle is attacked. Their captor, Abdul Murat, does not simply want revenge. He hopes to exchange them for his own son, who is being held by Russian forces. The prisoners are chained in a village. At first, both sides see enemies, but daily life weakens that view. Vanya repairs objects, performs small jobs, and forms a gentle connection with Abdul's daughter Dina. Sasha remains tougher and more suspicious, but even he begins to understand the people around them. A brilliant scene occurs when Vanya is ordered to face the village's champion fighter. A typical action film would give him a sudden heroic victory. Instead, the champion looks at the frightened young soldier and laughs, refusing to treat him as a serious opponent. The humane moment reveals more than a staged triumph. The final images are even stronger. After personal loss destroys the planned exchange, Vanya's fate seems sealed. Yet Abdul's final decision is shaped by the bond that war was not supposed to allow. As Vanya walks away, Russian helicopters pass toward the village. He waves desperately, trying to stop a new attack, but his voice cannot reach them. Sergei Bodrov's film earned an Academy Award nomination, but later slipped from discussion. That is difficult to understand. Prisoner of the Mountains is suspenseful, beautifully acted, and honest about how individuals can recognize each other even when larger forces refuse to do the same. Number 5. A Midnight Clear, 1992. A Midnight Clear begins like a ghost story in the snowy Ardennes. During December 1944, 6 young American intelligence soldiers are sent to occupy an abandoned building near German lines. Ethan Hawke's Will Not leads men with private fears and little combat experience. They soon realize that German soldiers are nearby. But instead of attacking, the Germans leave strange signs, sing Christmas songs, and even begin a snowball fight. The Americans slowly understand that the other group wants to surrender. Germany is losing, and these soldiers simply hope to survive. The film's most memorable section is the attempted staged surrender. Both groups plan a fake exchange of gunfire so the Germans can give up without appearing to abandon their duty. For a moment, opposing soldiers cooperate to escape the machinery around them. Then, one mistake destroys the plan. Confusion takes over, weapons become real, and the fragile trust built across the snow collapses. The disaster is not caused by a grand villain. It comes from fear, misunderstanding, and the difficulty of controlling events once people have been trained to expect danger. Gary Sinise, Kevin Dillon, Arya Gross, and Peter Berg help create a unit that feels genuinely young. Director Keith Gordon gives the film an unusual dreamlike mood, but the moral point stays simple. Enemies may understand each other before their leaders do. A Midnight Clear earned strong reviews but reached only a small audience. It remains one of the decade's smartest anti-war films, and its Christmas setting makes its sadness even sharper. Number 4. Stalingrad, 1993. The German film Stalingrad follows soldiers who begin the story resting in warm Italy and end it trapped in one of the most terrible battles of the Second World War. Lieutenant Hans von Witzland takes command of tired North Africa veterans sent east to Stalingrad. The change in atmosphere is immediate. Sunlight and open beaches disappear. The men enter broken buildings, crowded aid stations, sewers, snow, and hunger. The movie neither excuses their army nor treats every soldier as identical. Some obey without question. Some become cruel. Others slowly recognize the horror around them. A standout scene occurs when Germans and Soviets briefly stop firing so both sides can collect wounded men. For a few minutes, soldiers step into the open and see each other as exhausted human beings. The calm is fragile. One nervous action ends it, and the chance for mercy vanishes. Later, the surviving Germans search for an escape flight as the Soviet forces close the ring. The airfield is crowded with desperate men, and the last aircraft leaves without them. From then on, hope shrinks to survival. The ending in the snow is famous among those who have seen the film. It offers no speech, rescue, or final burst of glory. The cold simply continues. Stalingrad was a significant German production, but received limited exposure in North America. Viewers who know only larger English-language films about the Eastern Front should seek it out. Its scale is impressive, yet its greatest strength is the slow destruction of certainty. Number 3. Europa Europa, 1990. Europa Europa tells a true survival story so unbelievable that fiction might have been accused of going too far. Salomon Perel is a Jewish teenager from Germany who is separated from his family during the Second World War. To stay alive, he changes identities with Europe. Salomon lives among Soviet youth and later pretends to be an ethnic German. His language skills help German soldiers, and an officer sends him to a Hitler youth school. The identity protecting him can be exposed by a medical examination, a shared room, or one careless moment. Its strongest scenes mix terror with dark comedy. Salomon stands in class, while racist theories are presented as science. A teacher studies his face and declares that his features prove he belongs to the so-called superior group. The truth turns the lesson into an attack on the system's stupidity. His relationship with Leni, a young German girl, creates another painful trap. She is attracted to the identity he performs, while expressing hatred toward the person he actually is. Salomon wants affection, but cannot safely tell the truth. Agnieszka Holland directs, without turning survival into a clean victory. Every disguise saves Salomon, while separating him from himself. The war forces him to act as communist, soldier, student, and loyal German, while the frightened boy beneath those roles struggles to remain visible. Europa was acclaimed and based on Perel's real experience, yet it is still missing from many war film conversations. It deserves a place near the top because it makes identity itself feel like a battlefield. Number 2. Underground, 1995. Underground packs war, satire, black comedy, family tragedy, and national nightmare into one wild story. Emir Kusturica begins in Belgrade during the Second World War, where friends Marco and Blackie become involved in resistance and black market activity as German forces attack the city. Blackie and other refugees hide underground and manufacture weapons. Marco discovers that the underground workers can be controlled. Even after the war ends, he keeps them below, telling them that fighting continues so they will keep producing arms for him. Children grow into adults below as history becomes whatever Marco says. The opening bombing sequence announces the film's strange tone. Music plays, buildings shake, and animals escape from the damaged zoo. The scene is chaotic and funny until the destruction becomes impossible to ignore. That mixture makes laughter uncomfortable. Its most famous idea arrives when the underground community finally emerges and mistakes a film set for a real battlefield. Because they have been fed lies for years, staged war and actual war become impossible to separate. Later, the story moves into the breakup of Yugoslavia, showing how old myths return in new uniforms. The ending is unforgettable. Friends and family gather for a celebration on a piece of land that breaks away and floats down the river. It is joyful, impossible, and deeply sad, like a memory refusing to accept reality. Underground won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, so it was never ignored by critics. Yet many general audiences have still never seen it. Its length demands patience, but few films capture a country rewriting history with this much imagination. Number 1. Welcome to Sarajevo, 1997. Welcome to Sarajevo places viewers beside reporters, covering the siege of Sarajevo. But it refuses to make journalism look glamorous. Stephen Delane plays British correspondent Michael Henderson, who records civilian suffering and learns that shocking reports can be displaced by lighter news. Henderson visits an orphanage near the front line, where children live with little protection. He promises one girl, Emira, that he will help her leave. That decision turns observation into personal responsibility. Woody Harrelson plays American reporter Jimmy Flynn, whose bold style contrasts with Henderson's quieter determination. The opening scene immediately removes any distance. A wedding procession moves through the city, and ordinary celebration is interrupted by gunfire. The sudden moment shows daily life becoming dangerous without warning. Michael Winterbottom combines staged scenes with news footage, thinning the line between drama and history. The film's most haunting sequence is not an attack, but a concert. A cellist performs on a hill as citizens gather to listen. Earlier, he had said he would play when Sarajevo became the worst place on earth. The music is beautiful, but its meaning is devastating. Art survives, yet the concert confirms how far the city has fallen. Based on war reporter Michael Nicholson's book, and filmed soon after the conflict, Welcome to Sarajevo remains painfully immediate. It is overlooked because audiences often avoid stories that feel too recent, complicated, or upsetting. But that avoidance is exactly what the film challenges. At number 1, it reminds us that a war can disappear from television long before it ends, for the people trapped inside it. How did so many films this powerful slip through the cracks? The answer may be simple. They were too small, too foreign, too complicated, or too honest to compete with Hollywood's giant war spectacles. But overlooked does not mean unworthy. Which movie on this list surprised you most? And which forgotten 1990s war film did we miss? Share your pick below, subscribe for more hidden classics, and keep great cinema alive.